Counting the
Cost of being an artist and educator freelancer.
art and education. So how do you do that?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. A lot to unpack from there. But basically, being a freelancer gives me the freedom to practice what I love, but in a very, I guess, a less structured format. I don't know if that makes sense.
Wow. So pretty much freelancers can do whatever they want. They don't have to be under a certain system. You can create your own system. You can create your own flow. So what made you be interested in art in the first place?
Yeah, growing up, I've always loved art since a child. Actually, I remember like the first when even before I started formal studies in school, I found this random art book sitting on the table along with some other books, and I just pulled it out. And I remember it was literally like you draw and trace your hand, but you do different styles. And out of your the shape of your hand, you could design all sorts of images. And I just loved it. I just started like tearing apart this book and drawing and designing on things. And then my mom found out. She's like, "What in the world are you doing?" I'm like, "Mom, I love this."
Wow.
So yeah, I don't even know how old I was, but that was pretty much the start. When I got into elementary school, I was always drawing. I had a sketchbook with me, always into art stuff. As a good Asian kid, right? My parents are like, "Let's make sure you get music lessons." So she put me into piano class. I lasted for like 2, and then I just like broke down crying. I was like, "Mom, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore." And she looked at me, she's like, "What?" She's like, "Okay, so if you don't want to do music, what do you want to do?" And I looked at her and I was like, "Mom, I want to take art lessons."
Wow.
So I did. My mom finally was like, "Okay, I just have to let this child do what she wants." So I enrolled in art lessons and then I just flew from there. In
So
my head, I always thought I will be an artist.
so how long was the music lesson?
I think I lasted like 2 weeks maybe in piano lessons.
Man, I guess you love drawing and doing crafts and stuff. So how long? So you've done it throughout your whole life as your hobby?
Yes. All through my elementary, even in elementary school, I was drawing pictures and selling them for like 25 cents a piece to my classmates.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I would like draw and then color it and then sell it. And like people like, "Oh, can you draw me this? Oh, can you draw me that?" So I
Wow.
was a freelancer from a young age.
Wow, that's unbelievable. You're already generating income. Was that good enough to cover your like child's like spending?
I don't even know what I did with those quarters. I'm sure I bought something with it, but don't even
Wow.
remember.
Wow. So were you able to transition into part-time status income when you become a teenager or like a college age?
Well, when I got into my teen years and then starting to think about college, that was honestly a difficult time. Because that's where the rubber meets the road. And literally, so like, so what do you want to study in college? And I'm like, art. And they're looking at me like with this blank face, like, okay, anything else? And so we had to sit down and have these serious conversations. My parents were like, "Hey," and I really appreciate my parents because they weren't like, "You have to go to med school and that's your only option," right? I mean, which I know a lot of parents are like that, but parents were just wanting the practical side. Like they're like, "We really want to make sure you're able to provide for yourself, that you can actually pay the bills, that you can actually have a, sustainable living." And so they strongly counseled me to take a different direction than just art. And I was very stubborn, but at the same time, I was like, okay, prayed a lot about it, just wanted to get wisdom, advice, and I knew I really loved working with kids. And never people told me, why don't you think about teaching? You're a natural teacher. Like you engage. So I was like, okay, can we choose here? So I actually ended up for my undergrad doing a degree in art education, K
Oh,
12, where I could actually teach what I love, which
there
is
you
art.
go.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're doing both.
Yeah, so I started out with that, like getting that degree, but then I was like, that's really selective. Like, it's really hard to just be an art teacher, particularly in schools. Like, that's the first thing they cut if they have a budget cut. Bye bye, art, you
Oh,
know?
really?
So I ended up getting also elementary certification so I could teach
Oh.
all subjects. So I
Oh.
started out teaching in elementary school.
Oh.
Uh, I mean, kind of crazy journey. I taught elementary school and then somehow landed in transitioning from elementary to a college,
Oh.
in college administration, and then started teaching at the college level. And I was like,
Oh.
whoa, I honestly, like, it's totally a God thing because I would not have ever planned that in my life.
Oh.
But with my experience in higher education, I actually realized, whoa, I actually love teaching adults too. Like, there's a fun things. At first I was like, they're not like kids because kids are so much fun.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
adults, this is so nice because you don't have to be the parent. You're just like, okay, here's your homework. You do it or you don't, right?
Wow.
Mm.
So you have a degree of art education, and then you're able to teach at the university level?
It's crazy, right? I know it sounds totally crazy, but because I was working administration and they knew that my passion was teaching, because they asked me, "Do you like what
Ah.
you're doing?" And I said, I like working in the college setting, but no, I don't like administration. I want to be working with students. And okay, we'll do this. So they put me actually under an instructor of record. So literally, I was teaching under another professor.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
so that it actually, right? Because I didn't have the credentials at the time to
Uh
be
huh.
teaching
Yeah.
college level, but I taught underneath a professor.
So how long have you worked for different age levels so far?
So I first started teaching back in 2000 and man, I'm trying to remember now. My first year in elementary. Um, 2000. I think it was 2013. Yeah,
2013.
2013. Yep. Wow, it's 2022 now. Oh
So you
my goodness.
so I guess you've been involved with teaching.
Yeah, so since then, so then I worked at the college level and then I thought about, and then my boss pulled me aside and was like, you should just shoot for master's and doctorate and you can become a college professor. Wow, I never thought about this. And at that time, I kind of like, okay, tucked it away in the shelf and thought about it. I'm like, And at that time, I actually was really involved with overseas work and I loved traveling. So I ended up actually quitting my college job, administration, and I went overseas and I taught at an orphanage.
Oh.
Um, and prior to that, I had done several stints just during the summers, when I have summer break. I've gone to India, I've gone to Vietnam, I've gone to China, Cambodia, and just fell in love with the children overseas and especially working with, um, man, just so many kids out there who never got the chance of life that I got. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't even have time to share, but my family is a refugee family. They fled from war to come to America to raise me in a better place. So I was born in the US and I'm so grateful for all the opportunities I've had
Which were?
in the Vietnam War,
Oh, that famous war.
that famous war. Yeah, so both of my parents are refugees from Vietnam.
Wow.
But where was I going with this? Right. So, anyways,
Sorry.
so there's a piece of me that's always been like, I want to give back, because I know what it's like to come from poverty, everything that my parents experienced, and all the struggles they went through to get to the US. And so, me going back into those countries and into those cultures and being able to minister and just to be able to work with these kids, they're just the most amazing kids I've ever met. their resiliency, their diligence, their work ethic. It's just like if they had been given a different chance at life, how successful they could be. And so when I started to work with those, I was just like, wow. And everywhere I traveled, they kept asking, "Can you please teach English? Can you please teach English?" Sure, I mean, I'm from America, so I can speak English. Sure, why not? But then I started to realize, man, I'm getting this all the time. And so, yeah, when I ended up coming back to the US after teaching at the orphanage in Philippines, I ended up pursuing a master's of education with a specialty in ESL.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Actually, your story triggered me to ask you another question. When I teach students, especially those with single parents, because my dad passed away from cancer when I was a high school student, I feel like I'm dealing with myself, like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. The self that was struggling with loneliness, alienation, depression, all these things. So
Wow.
let's talk about your childhood a little bit. So how was your childhood as a immigrant's child?
Childhood as immigrants. You know, my parents did such a great job um, providing for us. It was funny because I didn't realize how different I grew up from the rest of, the other kids in my class. My parents did so well in just providing. I didn't know most of my childhood that I was, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know I was different,
Oh, I see.
like a socioeconomic class. Like that I
Yeah.
was just, I thought I had a great life.
You did.
No, and I mean, I'm really thankful. I didn't know until, getting a little bit older and I started to hear more of the stories and I just realized I'm like, oh my goodness, my parents went through so much for me.
Wow.
Like just the oh man, everything they've been through and even starting in the US with absolutely nothing. I mean literally but their clothes on their backs and working so hard to provide for my family. Like I have huge respect for both my mom and my dad.
I mean, how did they? Did they? I mean, there was a war going on. How did they get out?
Oh, how did they escape? Oh
Yeah.
man, that's a whole story in itself. I'll give you the short version.
Yeah.
So both of my parents lived in Saigon, which is the capital in the South. They didn't know each other. They actually met in the States, right? So they both lived in the same city, but of course Saigon is huge. And my dad is actually Chinese descent, so he lived in the Chinese quarters. And so literally both of them were there until the final days of Saigon. Like literally, they both escaped within 1 week before Saigon fell. Absolutely miraculous.
Wow.
Yeah, my mom. Get this. My mom lived in the Adventist Christian compound because missionaries had come from the U.S. and had shared their faith and brought my mom's family into the faith.
Wow.
And so my grandparents were one of the first converts, and they moved into the Adventist Christian compound there and started helping because amazing things. They started a school, they started a clinic dispensary, they started a publishing center, lots of amazing industries, right? And so my grandparents were helping with that. And of
Wow.
course, my mom and all of her siblings also were staying on that campus. Now, when US troops, they announced their withdrawal, then of course the Adventist staff, and they're because being Christian affiliated, they're just going to be the first target because Christianity is quote unquote American religion, right? So anything with Americans, first target, you're going to be out. So
Oh.
they started evacuating all of the Adventist personnel. So the entire compound campus they started just basically they would sneak them out at night after curfew. So of course
Wow.
during wartime there's curfew, right? You can't be out on the streets because there's fighting going on.
Oh.
My mom shared with me how she would just on her way to school come back and just see huge, where explosions went off and where there used to be a building, there's no longer a building.
Wow.
Dead bodies on the streets, like
Wow.
this is everyday life, right?
Wow.
So, and she would say, people would just disappear every day. And you're like, well, classmates get drafted into the army, people die. Like, it's just a chaotic scene. So they came to her house in the middle of the night, knocked on the door, and basically said, you need to go now or you may never get out.
Wow.
And just know you're going to be a target when the communists come in, because they're coming in because they knew once U.S. troops withdrew, Saigon knew they were that's it. There's no hope. So pulling everything out, and my grandmother was like, no, 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 we don't want to leave. We have a son who's fighting in the war. We have a daughter and son-in-law overseas. She's like, if I leave, the connection will be lost, the communication lines. So my grandmother and grandfather did not want to go, but they kept pushing. They said, if you don't leave tonight, you may not be able to get out. You need to go. And so they actually sent the kids ahead. My mom, her siblings, just literally they had clothes and a little sack of whatever with them. I think some food, some clothes. And in the middle of the night, they snuck them into an ambulance. So they hid the people in the ambulance, and the ambulance took them out to the airport where the Adventists had arranged for flights, evacuation flights going out. So there, they detained my mom and her siblings, and they said, we will not let them go until mom and dad go with you. So they finally coerced my grandparents to go as well.
Wow.
And they, through a long trek, multiple stops, stayed at refugee camps along the way, and finally landed in the U.S. in
Wow.
California.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It sounds like a movie story.
Insane. And then my dad, which he had no religious affiliation at all,
Oh.
but his stepfather worked for the U.S. Embassy.
Oh.
And because of that connection, in the very last moments, in the last week, was able to secure tickets for the entire family
Wow.
out to get to America.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so he did that same trek. Actually, my mom and dad traced their journeys, and they realized they actually stayed at the same refugee camps along the way.
Really?
Before to the U.S. Yeah, but they didn't know each other. Again, there's hundreds and hundreds of Vietnamese refugees fleeing. Wow. And it's amazing because by flight is the most secure way. A lot of other families I know tried to leave by boat, which was the most dangerous, and a lot of people died at sea. But both of my mom's families and my dad's families intact securely. My dad landed in California as well.
Wow.
And that's where they ended up meeting and marrying each other, and voila, that's why I'm here.
So both of them flew, or one of them took a boat?
Both of them were able to secure flights amazingly. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to handle when you're on a boat in the sea. That's so crazy.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, all kinds of crazy stories about the boat people who tried to escape. It's treacherous. Wow. But I actually did have a cousin too, an extended cousin who came by boat and made it alive. So that's also amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. So your background, your parents' story, and your family background, all these different dynamics, how did that shape you into a certain kind of teacher or a certain kind of art person that loved art?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. So I think for me, it has really given me a strong love and passion and understanding for people, especially people learning a new language, learning a new culture, coming into very diverse or difficult circumstances. I just have a strong empathy factor for them, relationship. The kids that I spend time with, I just see the horrific things that they've been through. I see the trauma they've been through and how valuable and precious their experiences really make them. And so for me, it's just a level of connection and identity that I find. And also, like, my parents have taught me such great principles of living, self sacrifice, discipline, living from very slim means. Like, from a very young age, my parents taught me, like, don't ever waste anything, like, to value smallest things. Yes, I did never threw away my food because that is a no-no. I ate all my food.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, because during the brief encounter that I had with you about a decade ago, I noticed that you had a certain level of like a certain ability to connect with people. Because I know some people may say, when I say my name, they say, "Oh, I'm not gonna remember your name anyway. I'll call you Jay." Instead of like trying to understand like what I was saying when I said my name, they were like, "Oh, I'm not gonna remember your name anyway." Or they say, "Oh, Korea," and the next time I meet them, "Are you from Japan?" Like they're so out of it. You know what I mean? Do you guys also eat
No.
sushi? Like they're not trying to understand a different culture. They just say, "Okay, you're just somebody that I have no idea about." But so I guess that ability to connect with people uh, is probably helping you a lot as a teacher. And then another question I had when you said you've been very, very interested in art is that my bias against artistic people is that, okay, a lot of them are introverted, a lot of them don't want to talk to anybody, a lot of them, a lot of them want to shun people and pursue their own whatever. And recently I was reading a passage with my students, and he said, art has been always means to communicate values, morality, beauty, something kind, something uplifting, some kind of beautiful God or something. But after ever since it hit 17th century or 18th century or something, art began to adopt evil, and they say, okay, art can carry this evil themes, and art itself can be um, considered as something that has absolute value, even when this includes immorality, as you can see from many Hollywood movies and all these things. So, so, but you don't look introverted. You don't look weird. You don't look strange.
Oh,
So,
phew.
so
That's,
can you clear that out?
can I clear that up? Wait, what do you
Clear
want me
that
to
up.
clear?
Like so my bias. So people that pursue art,
Uh-huh.
to me they look weird, like a lot of them, because they say, okay, they just randomly paint something, and they say this is an expression of my agony over whatever whatever. Anybody could have done that. I can't even do that, and that thing is like 3 million won, like $3,000. Like I'm just like, so so
Mm.
so um so it's not always the case that artistic people are either autistic or strange, or can you can you uphold your people?
Oh my, this is a tall order here. I did not ask for that. You know what's so funny was like when I was doing my undergrad, in art and doing art education, like people would throw jokes, like you're just an art major because you can't do anything else, right? Oh,
Wow.
oh my word. Somebody is like trying to kill me right now.
Wow.
But, that prevalence, I mean, there is that, and the idea like, oh man, like artists are just crazy and they're out there. And to be honest, I have to say that there's some crazy artists. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some artists out there, like, I look at their art and I'm like, what in the world are you thinking? You're not thinking. That's it. Right?
Yeah.
But actually, when you look at art as a means of communication, like to actually what you said at the beginning, that it communicates value, it communicates a message. Art is just merely a form of communication, and it can actually very well communicate a deep level of intellect. And actually, I think a lot of people miss the fact that artists have deep thoughts and ideas that they need to express not vocally with
Mm.
words, but with imagery. And so actually, I actually really love enjoying like sitting down and looking at very thoughtful pieces of artwork because I learned so much. I was like, whoa, I didn't think about that. What about that, right? So I think good art actually evokes us to think deeper, to
Mm.
challenge our worldviews,
Mm.
and to look at the world in a different way. Good art does that.
Oh, I see. Oh,
So,
actually, let me clarify. I just misrepresented introverted people by saying they don't want to talk to people. They're strange, but I mean, I think introverts have a lot of strength. They can pursue something very persistently, consistently, without needing the attention of other people. Because many people that are talkative, they're not even thinking, and people that have fewer words may not say dumb things. So I don't think I want to misrepresent introverts.
well, just so you know, I am an introvert, so I hope I didn't just break your bubble. But I hope I'm not a weird introvert.
Yeah, you don't look like that. You don't act like that. So
I think introverts can love people too,
that's true. That's true.
but we do need our quiet space.
That's
And
very
that
true.
quiet space is where the creativity, the thought,
That's very true.
and the visionary piece comes into play.
I used to be a huge introvert, but in order for me to learn English, I had to make friends. So I had to get out there and sell myself and
Would you
keep
consider
talking to
yourself an
people.
extrovert?
I look like extroverts, but I guess a huge part of me is an introvert. But I need a charging time. But also I need to be out there. I can't be in the room and just like I rot when I stay in the room. So so as an artist, can you like thrive like doing art in the room, like drawing like hours and hours? Like do you find joy doing that?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. I could do it for hours on end. Oh, definitely.
Wow, that's the quality right there.
But I couldn't do it forever. Like if I just did that for a whole week, then I would like I need to see people.
But my question is, when you are doing that, what is your end goal? Are you trying to present it to people, or are you doing it for the sake of yourself? Like where do you find the draw?
Yeah, so ultimately for me, if it wasn't in the end view of the viewer and who and what it can impact, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like it's not the joy of spending time with myself. It's the joy of creation that will impact others for eternity.
Oh, I see.
And so having that in mind, and also what been doing recently with my freelancing is teaching art workshops. And that has been
Ah,
so much fun because
oh,
it really blends my two passions. Because I
wow.
love just sitting and doing art, but more than that, I love seeing people activate their own creativity and
Oh,
start actually designing, creating, making, connecting on a deeper level with with their own creativity. And I
oh,
actually truly believe that fundamentally, we as humans were all designed with creativity.
that's very true.
Just, you know, ignore it or don't even think, oh no, I could never do anything like that. But
That's true.
actually, I believe by design that God created us with that because He is a
Oh,
creator
that's very true.
and He created us in His image,
That's very
right?
true.
That's the
Yeah.
first thing we see when you open the Bible,
Uh huh.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. What's the first thing we learn about God?
Creator.
He's a creator, right? And as we are made in His image, whoa, that gives a whole new paradigm. And so when I teach a lot of my art workshops, I start out with something like that and, you know, encouraging people and even creativity, like, because I mean, I teach in many different circles, whether it be in like a corporate, you know, team building, whether it be in a church setting, whether it just be in a social, you know, paint night. And I encourage people like creativity really unlocks so much potential in the human being. It actually
Mm.
makes us think on higher levels. If you
Mm.
actually look at, because teaching pedagogy, you look at the levels of learning,
Mhm.
and the highest level is what we call synthesis or creation. And
Oh.
the bottom level is just knowledge, like just repeating, right? I
Oh.
learned this fact, I repeat it, right?
Oh.
Then the next step up, I apply. I can understand this fact and I know how to apply the principle of it, right?
Oh.
Keep going up the scale. At the very top of the
Mm.
learning scale, this is called what we call the Bloom's taxonomy. At the very top is
Mm.
actually creation and synthesis.
Wow.
Actually defeats the myth that artists are just crazy. They're not using their brain. They're right. They're actually using their whole brain. It's actually utilization of all your intellect with your somatic senses. So your
Wow.
motor skills, your visual skills, your intellectual skills are all being put together when you start working in the hands-on.
You know what? Children industry in Korea is big because private education in Korea is pretty big. And
Really?
if you come to Korea and launch your own school, you can draw people with your English and art. You can you can fly with that.
All right. Well, if that's your invitation, I'll try to come to it.
Yeah, you can start your own school.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I took this master's in ESL because I was like, wow, I can actually teach anywhere in the world with this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I love traveling. I love, learning and growing from different cultures. So right now, I'm happy where God has placed me, but wherever God leads in the future, I'm happy to go.
Wow, great. So who are your current students in terms of their age, their backgrounds? How do you?
Okay,
How,
so well,
yeah.
I have the art workshops that I do, right, which is different demographics wherever I go, but it's within, here in California where I live. So I do different workshops. Like the next one I'm planning is actually going to be for a dental clinic,
Oh.
just for like a corporate, team building night. I'm super excited actually because I think dentists are really good artists, right? Because
Yeah.
they're working their teeth with such precision.
Uh huh.
So I'm actually really looking forward to this next group because I think they'll do an amazing job.
Oh.
So yeah, my audience varies with that, and then I also, on the other side with my ESL, I tutor ESL clients. So a lot of
Oh.
immigrants who have come to the U.S.
Oh.
and are wanting to learn English just to better, either their work opportunities or
Mm.
just social,
Mm.
Um, so I have, yeah, kind of those two different audiences.
Oh, I
And
see.
it's been really fun. I like that balance because the workshops is like a lot of different people I'm meeting.
Uh huh.
When I do ESL tutoring, I really go in depth and get to know a person
Mm.
individually. I collect their entire story. I ask them about their home countries, the immigration,
Mm.
how they have adapted to a new culture here.
Wow.
Three different things. Yeah.
So what's your foundation in terms of approaching students or children? Like what works the best with you in terms of reaching hearts?
Reaching hearts.
Yeah,
Oh man.
like how do you get them engaged if they're not motivated, if they're not getting, if they're slow? How do you get the breakthrough?
That's a good question. For me, most important is observation and listening.
Mm.
That just seeing and identifying. Motivation is a huge psychological thing, right?
Mm.
Learning has so much to do with motivation.
Mm.
And for children, like when I've worked with children, especially overseas in very diverse environments where they've gone through abuse, where they've gone through, multiple difficult situations and they struggle with learning, right?
Mm.
So I like to sit down with them and see what makes them tick. What do they actually enjoy?
Mm.
What do they actually, their eyes light up, right?
Oh.
So oftentimes it's a game. Oftentimes it's something fun that opens them up, or
Mm.
just seeing what they love most and using that and integrating it into the teaching. And
Mm.
other times, like for when I'm working with adults, it's just more listening to their stories
Mm.
and showing and building that trust.
Wow.
And people, when they learn to trust you, they just start opening up. Let me just share you a quick story that literally happened this week, right?
Wow.
The new ESL student come in
Uh huh.
and sat down with her, and this week was my second session with her,
Oh.
and she is an immigrant from China.
Mm.
And as we're just sitting and going, one of the things that I like to do at the start of my sessions, I'll ask them. I said, "Can I pray with you?" and just leave it open. And I'd love to pray together before we start a session. And she was like, yeah, sure. And by the end of the session, I spent time with her, getting to know her, her background, and she's at the end of it just starts pouring out her story. Like, I'm just struggling right now. This is going on in my life. This is and this. And she's like, there's so many stressors. And she looks at me and she's like, um, she was like, I saw you have a Bible there. Can you teach actually with the Bible? I said, of course.
Wow.
I'm really open to doing that. She's like, yeah, because I really like to learn. I know my English level is not very good, but
Wow.
she's like, when you have enough English, she's like, I really want to learn from the Bible. I was like, really?
Wow.
Tell me, why do you want to learn? What is it that she's like, I'm just going through so many stressors right now. She's like, I really need Jesus. If it weren't for Jesus, she's like, I would be like, literally, she's like, I really need something that will give me hope in my life and something that will help me to move forward, going
Wow.
through all the things that I'm going through in my life. And she's
Wow.
like, I only told you just a little piece of, her struggles with her relationship with her husband, her family, finance, just all of these different myriad of things. And I'm just like, wow. I
Wow.
had she was going through all this, right?
Yeah.
But the time that I spent with her, she trusted me, she opened up, and I was like, hey, God is good. God is going to do something in your life. And I'm so excited because when you're open to that sort of thing, God can do anything, right? So I'm really excited to be able to be studying with her these next couple of sessions and incorporating the Bible into our studies, which is so exciting because honestly, I think the Bible is one of the most amazing books
Uh huh.
as a textbook.
Uh huh.
It teaches so much, and actually using it for English instruction is by far, to me, one of the best textbooks.
I think I think people need more than money or power because I mean people say okay we have evolved from a monkey and we're just animals and adultery is normal. That's one of the scientists in Korea like was promoting in the YouTube channel. And in my mind, if Russia is wrong in invading Ukraine, why are we still thinking that we're animals attacking other animals? Where do you get the morality? And
Mm,
I think
mm,
if we have a certain sense of conscience where we say, oh wow, I love something more beautiful, I want to be understood, I want to be treated better, where do you get the morality? And I think evolution, where you say everything is so random and there is no creation, there is no order, there is no design, there is no something better, it just doesn't make any sense.
mm, mhm,
Actually, I had another question about your workshop. So, when your clients ask you to do a workshop and you say you're gonna help them do the team building experience, is that something they ask you to do? So we want an artistic time, and then we want to practice team building as a dental clinic, so we can work together better. Is that how it works? Are they doing it as some like retreat or something?
They just was like, oh wow, we saw what you're doing with these art workshops. We'd love to have one at our clinic. Like they would love to, try it out, like do a new art technique. And I think the whole team would love to engage in it together. And I said, sure. Because the one of the most recent workshops that I've been doing is the Kintsugi workshop. And I don't know if are you familiar with the Kintsugi art?
Sounds Asian or something. What is that?
Yeah, it's actually a Japanese art.
Oh yeah.
It's the art of repairing, restoring.
Oh, I saw that in your Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really cool because it's not just like, oh, I'm learning a new art technique. Beyond that, what I teach in that class is actually about restoration.
Oh.
And my friend who's a dentist who invited me there, she was sharing about how even the just within their group as work colleagues, they've been sharing about their journey, how they've been broken but healed
Mm,
again, right? Different
wow.
experiences they've gone through. And so
Mm,
actually, when I get to share with them, I'll be talking about that. How
mm,
do we embrace the flaws of our past
mm,
and not try to hide them,
mm,
but actually what? can be done to restore and to redeem,
Wow.
make better than it was before. The idea of kintsugi is that after it's broken, it's going to be more beautiful than it was before.
Wow.
And that actually has so many different levels of application to our personal lives and even about redemption and what God does for us. Like, so many different lessons you can take from
That's
that.
so beautiful how we can heal people through the means of art.
Yeah. Oh man, I can tell you stories from there too. The last time I did Kintsugi workshop, a lady came up to me and she just was like, "Can I hug you?" I was like, "Sure." What you just shared tonight testified to the last 8 years of hell that I've been through. But
Wow.
what you shared tonight gave me so much hope that, even though I've been through hell, like those
Wow.
things I can actually view with a different lens. I actually even introduced some things about, post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD,
Yeah.
and how some people react to trauma. And then
Mm.
there's actually another thing which I was researching, very fascinating, is called PTG. And a lot of people haven't heard this, but it's actually called post traumatic growth. And
Mm.
it's actually been documented in individuals who've gone through trauma and then actually, after that trauma, grown from it, actually
Oh.
values, develop new worldviews,
Wow.
gain skill sets. Yeah. And
Mm.
so researchers are recognizing, whoa, there's one type of response where people end up losing the quality of their lives, and there's another response where people actually gain better qualities. And so that's where I started sharing about kintsugi and the whole concept. Like, it's how you view what you've been through.
That sounds like me.
It sounds like you.
Yeah, because I went through a lot, but I chose to look on the brighter side, and I
Mhm.
don't live a depressing life.
Mm.
Made me stronger
Wow.
and
I'm
more
sure there's a cool story behind that. I should interview you next
more,
time.
more yeah, more empathetic. Yeah, I went through a lot. Wow, thank you so much for communicating hope to people as a professional. Not many people do that.
It's so much fun. It's just amazing to see people light up, amazing to see people just come out with, more hope. So it's a blessing to me, and I hope it's a blessing to others.
So the dental clinic, is the working crews, not the dental clinic patients, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The staff.
The staff.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's uh-huh.
so businesses want you to come and do that workshop so they can go through something therapeutic in a sense.
Yeah, it can be art therapy, it can be art education, it can just be a social night. Like art workshops can go many different forms. So
I see. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It really spoke volumes to me because sometimes I feel stuck in my own rut, and I stop being creative. I keep doing the same nonsense over and over when it's not working, and that's the time when I need to look around and see what is better out there and start being creative. Because when you're stuck, you're not being creative, you're not solving problems. But when you are being creative, you're solving problems, you're helping people. So I think, I think unselfishness starts with being able to be creative.
wow, I love that. I'm gonna quote you next time.
do you think I do you think I can do this again in a few years later?
Do another interview?
Yeah, a few years later.
Sure.
To keep track of your artistic endeavor.
Yeah, we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah, not probably not like next year or anything, but probably a few years later.
I am actually super excited because I'm literally in the midst of an art company launch.
Oh,
So the
cool.
art workshops, I'm actually going to be start selling art prints, and from that, actually be using that as a advocacy platform for orphanage work.
Wow.
Because my passion is kids. I want to help children in third world countries. And so by my art business, I want to be supporting what I love most. So hopefully next couple of years, I'll be able to
Wow.
share
That sounds so beautiful, Rebecca.
that.
We'll meet each other again and talk each other talk with more fun stories to share at the time.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the interview, Jaywa. It's been a great time connecting with you.
Thank you. Blessings to California.
All right, take
Take
care.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.